The gunshot echoed through the valley as Zara Lawson watched her husband's body crumple to the ground, her world shattering in an instant on that fateful spring day in 1878. The Montana Territory sunset painted the sky crimson, as if heaven itself bled for Thomas Lawson, struck down by a bandit's bullet during a stagecoach robbery gone wrong. "Thomas!" Zara screamed, rushing forward despite the danger, her calico dress billowing in the wind. At 26, she never imagined becoming a widow, especially not with a 2-year-old son waiting at home with his grandmother. The bandits had fled, spooked by approaching riders, leaving Zara cradling her husband's head in her lap, tears streaming down her face as his blood seeped into the dusty earth. She pressed her hand against his wound, willing life back into him even as his eyes grew distant. "Don't leave me, Thomas, please," she begged, her voice breaking. His fingers, growing cold, reached for her face. "Take care of our boy," he whispered. "I love you both so much." Then his hand fell, and the light left his eyes. She wasn't sure how long she sat there, rocking his body, before strong hands gently pulled her away. Through her tears, she saw a tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun, a stranger on horseback who had arrived too late to prevent the tragedy, but just in time to prevent her from being alone in her darkest hour. "I'm sorry, madam," the man said, his voice deep and gentle. "We should get you to safety before those men return." Zara could barely speak as the stranger helped her to her feet. She watched in numb silence as he carefully wrapped Thomas's body in a blanket and secured it to his horse. "I'm Isaiah Nichols," he said, removing his hat respectfully. "I'll help you get your husband home for a proper burial." Over the next few days, Isaiah proved to be a godsend. He helped transport Thomas's body back to Zara's small ranch outside of Silverdale, assisted with the burial arrangements, and stood a respectful distance away as the townsfolk gathered to pay their respects. Thomas had been well liked in the community, a hard-working rancher who had built their modest spread from nothing. Now he was gone, leaving Zara alone with little Jacob, and a ranch too big for a woman to manage on her own. After the funeral, when the last of the neighbors had left with their covered dishes and condolences, Isaiah approached Zara on the porch, where she sat staring at the rolling hills that surrounded her property. "I'll be moving on tomorrow, Mrs. Lawson," he said, his hat in his hands. "But I wanted to make sure you'd be all right." Zara looked up at the stranger who had shown such kindness. Isaiah Nichols was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes that seemed older than his 30 years. His dark hair was in need of a trim, and his clothes were travel-worn but clean. "We'll manage somehow," she said, though uncertainty laced her words. "Thank you for all you've done, Mr. Nichols." Isaiah shifted uncomfortably. "If you don't mind me saying, madam, running a ranch alone with a little one isn't easy. I'd be willing to stay on for a spell. Help with the heavy work until you get your bearings." Zara wanted to refuse pride, insisted she should, but practicality won out. The spring cattle drive was approaching, fences needed mending, and she couldn't do it all while caring for Jacob. "I can pay you a fair wage," she said finally, "but only until I find someone permanent." Isaiah nodded. "That's agreeable, madam." That night, as Zara lay in her bed too large and empty without Thomas, she wondered if she'd made the right decision. Isaiah seemed honorable, but he was still a stranger. Yet something about his quiet strength reminded her of Thomas, and that thought both comforted and pained her. Over the following weeks, Isaiah proved his worth. He rose before dawn, worked tirelessly through the day, and never complained about the modest meals Zara provided. He slept in the barn, kept a respectful distance, and was gentle with little Jacob, who followed him around like a shadow. One evening, as Zara was putting Jacob to bed, the boy asked, "Is Mr. Isaiah gonna be my new pa?" The innocent question struck Zara like a physical blow. "No, sweetheart. Your pa was Thomas Lawson, and no one can ever replace him." But pause in heaven now. Mr. Isaiah could help us? Zara kissed his forehead. Go to sleep, Jacob. Mr. Isaiah is just helping us for a while. Later, she sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge. The spring air was cool, carrying the scent of wildflowers and pine. She heard Isaiah's footsteps before she saw him, a careful tread that announced his presence without startling her. Mind if I join you, Mrs. Lawson? He asked. She gestured to the empty chair beside her. Please. They sat in companionable silence until Isaiah spoke. The cattle drive to Fort Benton starts next week. Thompson from the next ranch over asked if we'd join their outfit. Your herd's ready. We? Zara asked, raising an eyebrow. Isaiah looked embarrassed. Pardon my presumption. Your cattle are ready, and Thompson asked if I'd ride with them. And would you? It means being away for 2 weeks at least. Not if you need me here, Isaiah said. I wouldn't leave you and the boy alone if you weren't comfortable with it. Zara considered. The cattle drive was essential for their income, but the thought of being alone again made her uneasy. Still, she had managed before Thomas, and she could manage now. You should go, she decided. We need the money from those cattle. Isaiah nodded. I'll make sure you get a fair price. The night before Isaiah was set to leave with the cattle drive, Zara found herself restless. Jacob was asleep, and the house was quiet, too quiet. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stepped outside, drawn to the soft glow of lantern light in the barn. She found Isaiah preparing his saddle and gear for the early morning departure. He looked up, surprised to see her. Mrs. Lawson, is everything all right? Yes, she said, though she wasn't entirely sure why she'd come. I just wanted to thank you again for all your help. Isaiah set down the bridle he'd been checking. It's been my pleasure, madam. Please, call me Zara. After all these weeks, Mrs. Lawson seems overly formal. A small smile crossed his face. Zara. Then, something in the way he said her name made her heart flutter unexpectedly. She pushed the feeling away, guilt immediately following. Thomas had been gone barely 2 months. I should get back to the house, she said quickly. Zara, Isaiah called as she turned to leave. I'll come back. You have my word. The sincerity in his voice made her pause. I know you will. The cattle drive only takes 2 weeks. That's not what I meant, he said quietly. I mean, after the drive, I'll keep working here as long as you need me to. I won't just disappear. The promise in his words provided more comfort than she wanted to admit. Thank you, Isaiah. That means a great deal. The 2 weeks of the cattle drive were the longest of Zara's life since Thomas's death. She kept busy with Jacob and the daily chores, but the ranch felt empty without Isaiah's reassuring presence. She told herself it was simply because she'd grown accustomed to having help, not because she missed the man himself. Jacob asked about Mr. Isaiah daily, wondering when he would return with stories of the trail. Zara found herself watching the horizon each evening, hoping to see a familiar silhouette on horseback. It was 16 days before Isaiah returned, riding in just before sunset. Jacob spotted him first and ran down the path, shouting with excitement. Zara followed at a more dignified pace, though her heart quickened at the sight of him. Isaiah dismounted and swung Jacob up into his arms, the boy chattering a mile a minute about everything that had happened in his absence. When he looked up and saw Zara, his smile warmed. Successful drive? She asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Isaiah nodded, setting Jacob down. Very. I've got your money in my saddlebag, and Thompson says he'll take your cattle again next year. Said they were some of the healthiest in the drive. Pride swelled in Zara's chest. Thomas always took good care of his stock. A shadow passed over Isaiah's face at the mention of Thomas, so brief she almost missed it. He built a fine operation here, he agreed. That evening, after counting out more money than she'd expected from the cattle sale, Zara prepared a special dinner to celebrate. Isaiah cleaned up and joined them at the table, his hair still damp from washing. Jacob dominated the conversation, demanding tales of the trail. Isaiah obliged with stories of river crossings and prairie storms, carefully edited for young ears. Zara found herself laughing for the first time in months, caught up in the warmth of the moment. Later, with Jacob tucked in bed, Isaiah and Zara again found themselves on the porch. The summer night was warm, fireflies dancing in the yard. "I've been thinking," Isaiah said after a comfortable silence. "The south pasture fence still needs work, and the barn roof won't make it through another winter." "Are you angling for more work, Mr. Nichols?" Zara teased. He smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "I'm saying I'd like to stay on if you're agreeable. Not just for a spell, but more permanently." The offer hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Zara's throat felt tight. As a ranch hand? Isaiah met her gaze steadily. For now. The future can take care of itself. She should refuse, she knew. Having a single man living on her property was already causing whispers in town, but the thought of Isaiah leaving made her chest ache in a way she wasn't ready to examine. "All right," she said finally. "But you should move into the house. The spare room, I mean," she added quickly. "There's no sense in you sleeping in the barn when there's a perfectly good bed going unused." Isaiah nodded, his expression unreadable. "Thank you, Zara." Summer faded into fall, and Isaiah became a fixture at the Lawson ranch. He moved into the spare room but spent most daylight hours outside working. Under his care, the ranch flourished, fences mended, the barn roof replaced, the cattle healthy. Jacob adored him, and Isaiah taught the boy to ride his first pony, fish in the creek, and identify animal tracks in the mud. Zara watched their growing bond with mixed emotions: gratitude that her son had a male figure in his life, worry that he might forget Thomas, and guilt over how comfortable their arrangement had become. The townsfolk talked, of course. Some approved of her practical solution to running the ranch. Others disapproved of a widow living with an unmarried man, no matter the sleeping arrangements. Zara held her head high in church and in town, ignoring the whispers. One crisp October afternoon, Zara was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats approaching. A rider she didn't recognize pulled up to the house, dismounting with the ease of a man who spent his life in the saddle. "Mrs. Lawson?" he called. "I'm Marshall Pearson from Fort Benton." Zara approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yes? Is something wrong?" The marshal, a middle-aged man with a salt-and-pepper mustache, removed his hat. "I'm looking for a man named Isaiah Nichols. I have reason to believe he might be here." Her heart stuttered. "May I ask why you're looking for him?" "Nothing serious, madam. Just need to ask him some questions about a matter he might have witnessed before coming here." He glanced around. "Is he about?" "He's out checking the herd," Zara said, relieved it wasn't more serious, but still uneasy. "He should be back by supper time." The marshal nodded. "I'll wait, if you don't mind." Isaiah returned just before dusk, leading his horse toward the barn. He froze momentarily when he spotted the unfamiliar horse tethered outside, then continued with deliberate casualness. Zara met him at the barn door. "There's a Marshall Pearson here to see you," she said quietly. "From Fort Benton." Something flickered in Isaiah's eyes, concern, perhaps fear, before his expression smoothed. "Did he say what about?" "Just that he needs to ask you about something you might have witnessed." Isaiah nodded, his jaw tight. "I'll speak with him." Zara watched as Isaiah approached the house, shoulders squared like a man heading into battle. She followed, worry gnawing at her. Marshall Pearson rose from the porch chair when Isaiah approached. "Mr. Nichols? I'm Marshall Pearson." "What can I do for you, Marshall?" Isaiah's voice was level, but Zara noticed his hand resting near his belt where his pistol would normally be. "I'm investigating the stagecoach robbery outside Silverdale this spring, the one where Thomas Lawson was killed." Zara felt the blood drain from her face. Isaiah's expression remained carefully neutral. "What about it?" Isaiah asked. "We caught one of the bandits last week. Before he swung, he named his partners." The marshal studied Isaiah intently. "Said you rode with them for a spell before the robbery." Zara's gasp was audible. Isaiah's eyes closed briefly, pain crossing his features. "Is that true?" Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Isaiah faced her, anguish evident in his expression. "I rode with them for 2 weeks, yes, but I left when I realized what they were planning. I never took part in any robbery." "Then why were you there that day?" Marshal Pearson pressed. "Because I heard them planning to hit the Silverdale stage," Isaiah said, his voice raw. "I tried to get there in time to warn the driver, but I was too late." His eyes found Zara's. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt, especially not your husband." The revelation hit Zara like a physical blow. All these months, she'd never questioned why Isaiah happened to be there right after Thomas was shot. "You knew," she whispered. "All this time, you knew who killed him." "I've been tracking them," Isaiah said. "Every free moment, asking questions in town, following leads. I wanted to bring them to justice before I told you." "Is that why you stayed?" The question hurt to ask. "Guilt?" Isaiah's face crumpled. "At first, perhaps. But then I got to know you and Jacob. It became more." Marshal Pearson cleared his throat. "Mr. Nichols, I'm not here to arrest you. The dying man cleared your name. Said you tried to talk them out of it. I'm here because we're still looking for the other two. And I thought you might help." Relief flashed across Isaiah's face, but Zara couldn't share it. The foundation of trust she thought they'd built felt suddenly unstable. "If you'll excuse me," she said stiffly, "I need to check on my son." She hurried inside, leaving the two men on the porch. She found Jacob playing with wooden blocks in his room, blissfully unaware of the conversation that had just upended her world again. Later, after the marshal had gone with Isaiah's promise to help track the remaining bandits, and after Jacob was asleep, Isaiah found Zara sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. "I should pack my things," he said quietly from the doorway. Zara didn't look up. "Why didn't you tell me?" Isaiah entered the room slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. "At first, I wasn't sure how. How do you tell a grieving widow that you once rode with the men who killed her husband, even if you weren't part of it?" And then, time passed, and it got harder to find the words. "You should have found them anyway." Her voice was flat, drained of emotion. Isaiah knelt before her, not touching her, but close enough that she could see the torment in his eyes. "You're right. I should have. I was a coward, afraid of losing what we were building here." "And what was that exactly?" Zara asked, finally meeting his gaze. "A home," he answered simply. "Something I've never really had before. A chance to do right by you and Jacob. A family, maybe, someday." The word family hung in the air between them. Despite her anger, Zara felt a treacherous flutter in her chest. "I don't know if I can trust you now," she said honestly. "I understand." Isaiah rose. "I'll go in the morning." As he turned to leave, Zara spoke again. "Did you mean what you said about tracking Thomas's killers?" "Yes. I've been trying since it happened. That's why I sometimes rode into town alone, or was gone overnight." He paused. "I wanted to make it right somehow." Zara considered his words. The pain of his deception was real, but so was everything else he'd done for her and Jacob over the past months. The ranch was thriving under his care. Jacob adored him. And she wasn't ready to examine what she felt for Isaiah Nichols. "Don't leave," she said finally. "Not yet. Jacob would be heartbroken and the winter's coming. We can reassess in the spring." Relief washed over Isaiah's features. "Thank you, Zara." The atmosphere at the ranch changed after the marshal's visit. Isaiah worked harder than ever, as if trying to prove his worth through sheer physical labor. Zara was polite, but distant, struggling to reconcile the man she'd come to rely on with the revelation of his past. Only with Jacob did things remain unchanged. Isaiah continued to be patient and kind with the boy, teaching him and playing with him as before. Jacob, innocent of adult complications, was the bridge that kept them connected when hurt and mistrust might otherwise have driven them apart. Winter arrived early that year, with the first heavy snow falling before Thanksgiving. The ranch became an island in a sea of white, their trips to town less frequent as the roads grew treacherous. The forced isolation pushed Zara and Isaiah into closer proximity, making it harder to maintain emotional distance. On a particularly bitter December evening, with wind howling around the eaves of the house, they sat before the fire after Jacob had gone to bed. Isaiah was repairing a bridle, his big hands surprisingly deft with the small leather pieces. Zara was mending one of Jacob's shirts, stealing glances at Isaiah when she thought he wasn't looking. "Thomas would have been 31 next month," she said suddenly, surprising herself with the comment. Isaiah set down his work, giving her his full attention. "What was he like, if you don't mind my asking?" Zara hadn't spoken much about Thomas since Isaiah arrived, partly because it hurt too much, and partly because it felt disloyal somehow, given her confusing feelings for Isaiah. "He was kind," she said after a moment. "Steady. Not a dreamer, he was practical, always thinking of the future. He wanted to build something that would last, something he could pass on to Jacob someday." She smiled sadly. "He loved this land, said he felt God's presence most strongly here, with the mountains in the distance and the prairie stretching out before him." Isaiah nodded. "I can understand that." "He wasn't perfect," Zara continued, finding that speaking about Thomas was easier than she'd expected. "He could be stubborn, set in his ways, but he was a good man, a good husband and father." Tears pricked at her eyes. "He didn't deserve to die like that." "No, he didn't," Isaiah agreed quietly. After a pause, he added, "I envy him, you know." Zara looked up, surprised. "Why?" "Because he had you," Isaiah said simply. "Because he knew what it was to be loved by you." The words hung in the air between them, too honest to be ignored, too powerful to be easily acknowledged. Zara's heart hammered in her chest. "Isaiah," she began, not sure what she meant to say. "I'm sorry," he cut her off. "I shouldn't have said that. It's not my place." "And what is your place?" she asked, the question emerging before she could stop it. Isaiah met her gaze steadily. "Whatever you want it to be, Zara. I'm here as long as you'll have me, in whatever capacity you need." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken possibilities. Zara looked away first. "I should check on Jacob," she said, rising quickly. That night, lying alone in the bed she had once shared with Thomas, Zara faced a truth she had been avoiding for months. She was falling in love with Isaiah Nichols. The realization brought not joy, but guilt and confusion. How could she love another man when she still loved Thomas? Was her heart big enough for both? And even if it was, could she ever fully trust Isaiah after learning he had hidden such an important truth from her? December gave way to January, and on Thomas's birthday, Zara took Jacob to visit his father's grave. Isaiah stayed behind, understanding their need for privacy. When they returned, cheeks red from the cold, Isaiah had prepared a special dinner and even baked a cake in Thomas's honor. "I thought we might celebrate his life," Isaiah explained hesitantly. "Jacob told me chocolate cake was his favorite." The thoughtful gesture broke something loose in Zara's chest. That night, after Jacob was asleep, she found Isaiah in the barn, checking on a pregnant mare. "Thank you," she said from the doorway. "For today." Isaiah straightened, wiping his hands on his pants. I just thought Jacob might like it. And you too, maybe. Zara stepped fully into the barn, closing the door behind her against the winter cold. It made me realize something. What's that? Isaiah asked, his voice cautious. That I can love Thomas and still move forward with my life. She took a deep breath. I've been afraid that opening my heart to someone new would somehow diminish what Thomas and I had. But that's not true, is it? Isaiah moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. No, love doesn't work that way. It expands to fit what we need it to. I still love him, Zara said, her voice breaking slightly. I always will. Isaiah reached out slowly, as if giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. I know. I would never ask you not to. In the soft lantern light of the barn, surrounded by the quiet sounds of animals settling for the night, Zara made a decision. She stepped closer to Isaiah, looking up into his face. I think I'm ready to let someone else in, she whispered. Slowly. Isaiah's free hand came up to cup her cheek. I can do slowly, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle exploration that quickly deepened into something more urgent. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Zara rested her forehead against Isaiah's chest. This won't be easy, she warned. There will be days when grief hits me all over again, days when I might pull away. Isaiah's arms tightened around her. I'm not going anywhere, Zara, not unless you send me away. Spring came early that year, the snow melting to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the soil. The ranch burst into new life. Calves were born, wildflowers bloomed, and the days grew longer and warmer. Isaiah and Zara's relationship developed slowly over those months, private moments stolen when Jacob was asleep or playing outside. They were careful not to confuse the boy, though Jacob seemed to accept their growing closeness with the easy adaptability of childhood. In late April, a letter arrived from Marshal Pearson. The remaining bandits had been captured near the Canadian border. They would stand trial for Thomas's murder and other crimes. The marshal credited Isaiah's information with helping track them down. Zara read the letter twice, then handed it to Isaiah. It's over, she said simply. That night they sat together on the porch swing, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Isaiah's arm was around her shoulders, her head resting against him. What happens now? Isaiah asked quietly. Zara considered the question. Justice has been served as much as it can be. Thomas is still gone, but his killers will pay for what they did. And us? Isaiah's voice held a note of uncertainty. Zara turned to face him. I've been thinking about that. The town gossip has mostly died down, but it will start up again when people realize we're together. Does that bother you? Not as much as it once would have, she admitted. But I do worry about Jacob. I want him to understand that you're not replacing his father, just becoming a part of our family in your own right. Isaiah's eyes softened at the word family. He took her hands in his. Zara Lawson, I love you. I love Jacob. I would be honored to build a life with you both, if you'll have me. Tears filled Zara's eyes. I love you too, Isaiah, but I need you to understand something. Anything, he promised. I still love Thomas, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. That won't ever change. He gave me Jacob, this ranch, years of happiness. He'll always be a part of me. Isaiah nodded solemnly. I would never want to erase him from your heart or Jacob's memory. Zara squeezed his hands. Then I accept. I want to build a life with you, Isaiah Nichols. Isaiah pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that spoke volumes. When they separated, he whispered against her ear. I still love him, the widow said. Then let me love you both quietly. The simple promise, so perfectly capturing what Zara needed, brought fresh tears to her eyes. Yes, she whispered back. That's exactly what I want. They were married in the small church in Silverdale 2 months later, with Jacob proudly serving as the ring bearer. The townsfolk turned out in force, any remaining gossip silenced by the obvious love between the couple and Isaiah's clear devotion to both Zara and her son. After the ceremony, they visited Thomas's grave together, all three of them. Zara placed fresh wildflowers beside the headstone while Isaiah stood respectfully behind her, his hand on Jacob's shoulder. "We're not forgetting you," Zara said softly to the grave. "We're just finding a way to be happy again. I think you'd want that for us." As they walked back to their wagon, Jacob between them holding both their hands, Zara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known since Thomas's death. Her heart still held grief, would always hold a space for her first love, but it had expanded to include a new love as well, one no less powerful for coming second. That night, after celebrating with friends and family, Isaiah carried a sleeping Jacob into the house and tucked him into bed. When he joined Zara in what was now their bedroom, he found her standing by the window, looking out at the land that had been her home for so long. "Having second thoughts?" he asked gently. Zara turned to him with a smile. "No, just thinking about how life takes us on unexpected journeys. I never imagined loving two men in my lifetime, yet here I am, my heart somehow big enough for both." Isaiah crossed to her, taking her in his arms. "Your capacity for love is one of the many things I admire about you, Zara Nichols." The new name sent a thrill through her. "Say it again," she requested. "Mrs. Zara Nichols," he obliged with a smile, "beloved wife, mother, and the strongest woman I've ever known." As they came together in the soft glow of lamplight, Zara felt Thomas's memory not as a barrier between them, but as a blessing, a reminder that love, once experienced, teaches us how to love again, differently perhaps, but no less truly. In the years that followed, the ranch prospered under their joint care. Jacob grew into a young man who carried his father's name proudly, while also cherishing the guidance of the man who had stepped into his life when he needed it most. Two more children joined their family, a girl with Zara's eyes and Isaiah's smile, and another boy who had his mother's determination and his father's gentle heart. And on each anniversary of Thomas's death, the family would visit his grave together, acknowledging that their happiness had been built not on forgetting the past, but on honoring it while still embracing the future. A testament to love's enduring power to heal, to grow, and to transform grief into something beautiful.